Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. I know we are letting everyone in for our town hall this afternoon, and so thank you very much for joining us today. We are hoping to give you a lot of information, and we know we're going to be giving you a lot of information in a short amount of time, but we want to make sure that you know that we're here for you. We can answer any questions you have specifically about your information, and we're here to help you. So we are just going to kind of get right in. My name is Michelle Rhodes. I'm the Associate Vice President for Financial Aid and Scholarships here at Grand Valley, and I would like to introduce you to some of my team who's able to join us today. I have Jenna Paul. She is an Associate Director in the office here. Francesca Golden, another Associate Director for us. Erin Braganton, she is one of our financial aid assistants. If you come in the office, you'll see her at our front desk. Ben Rhodes, one of the Assistant Directors in the office. Hugh Gill is our Assistant Director for Student Employment, so he can answer some of those questions for you in a few minutes. And then Nick Bromley is our Associate Director in the office as well, and he's going to kind of be behind the scenes today and handle some of our technology for us, and you'll see him posting some things in the chat as well. So if for those of you who need to be oriented to Zoom a little bit, at the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A box that you can go ahead and ask questions to, and we will do our best to respond to those during the webinar, or we'll respond to that privately for you depending on the question. And we already might be planning to answer that as well. So if you have questions, please feel free to go ahead and put that in the box. And Nick will also be giving us some information in the chat. So he'll be sharing some websites and some web links as well. So if you have any questions throughout, the Q&A is the best place for you to get those answered. So today we're going to be discussing many questions that you submitted ahead of time, and we're planning to discuss some timelines and deadlines. We'll talk a little bit about the bills and the refunds, talk about our special circumstance and hardship process, as well as the CARES funding. Student employment, of course, we had many questions about that. There were some questions about some Michigan Educational Savings Plan or 529 plans that some of you may have for your students. And also just talk about some loans, scholarships in general, and then answer some other general questions. So I'm gonna get right into it. And for most of you, you likely have already seen your bill, or you've been emailed a copy of your bill. We do one time send a paper bill to all of our new students, but we only do that once. So for those of you who registered, either last month or a little bit ago, you probably already received that paper bill in the mail. If those of you have just registered, don't worry, the paper bill is coming, and everything is also available to you online as well. So one of the things Grand Valley does is we do bill semester by semester, so you'll see those charges reflected there. And then there's also other things added to the bill, and I'm going to turn it over to Erin right now, and she's going to go over some timelines and deadlines around the bill and just give you some general information there. So thank you, Erin.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you. So one of the first things I want to touch on is if you're a parent or a family or a guardian that is typically the one paying the bill and you need to view the bill, you may want to encourage your student to log on to their student accounts tab under their My Banner and give you proxy access. This will allow you to be able to log in yourself and view the bill, as well as view any of the aid that would be applying to the account. In order to view the aid that is offered to the student would need to log on to their My Banner and go underneath the Financial Aid tab, and all the way over to the right-hand side, there will be a tab that says Accept Aid Offer. If you click on that tab, that will bring you to the aid that the student has been awarded, along with the access to be able to accept or decline any of the aid that is outstanding. We do accept all scholarships and grants on behalf of the student automatically, and those will apply to the student's balance automatically. Once that is completed, a student would need to complete 2 steps if they've never had loans before through Grand Valley, and that is the entrance counseling as well as the master promissory note. This can be completed on studentaid.gov, and it will take the student roughly 30 to 45 minutes to complete. It is a tutorial with the entrance counseling of what student aid loans look like and how it will look at the end. And then the master promissory note is them signing and agreeing to the terms of the loan. If you choose to use a parent loan, the parent would need to use their FSA ID and log on to studentaid.gov as well and they will need to complete an application. And at the end of that application, you will see if you're approved or denied for the loan. If approved and you choose to take out that loan, you need to complete a master promissory note as well, which is you agreeing to the terms and agreement of the loan. We would also like to make sure that this is all done within a timely manner to allow time for the loans to process and apply to the bill prior to the bill due date of August 21st by 5 p.m. So we're asking that students and families complete this within this week or the early beginnings of next week. That way, if you run into any problems or have any further questions, we can assist you and make sure that it's done in a timely manner before the bill is due.
All right, thank you, Erin. So once again, we realize that was a lot of information, some really helpful information for those of you who are trying to take those next steps. But please feel free to email our office if you want us to check your individual account, and we're happy to do that and be very specific with what we might still be missing too if you can't seem to find it through the My Banner account. So we also know that specifically during this time, we've received a lot of questions around hardship funding or special circumstances, or, does this kind of answer the question of what if I don't have enough to cover my bill? What if I've accepted everything and I'm still looking for additional resources? So I'm going to turn it over to Ben Rhodes, and he's going to go ahead and go through some of the loans and specifics and talk about a payment plan as well. So thank you, Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. And I want to say welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today, too. And so, as Erin said, the grants and scholarships are going to pay on your account, but then people have this question about what's the next aid that I can use and what's the specific details about that aid. So most of your students will have a loan on their account or on their financial aid award if you've completed FAFSA. You're going to see technically two different loans on the account, a student loan, and I would say most of you will also see a Parent Plus loan. Now, the student loan, getting into those details, can actually be divided into two different loans a lot of times. One would be the subsidized loan, and one would be the unsubsidized loan. However, that would be based on your FAFSA results. And so a subsidized loan, which does not accrue interest, that's a great loan, a maximum of $3,500 a semester, but that would be on your student's account as a subsidized based on your FAFSA results. Every freshman coming in can get a total of $5,500 a year. And then again, if you have that ability to get subsidized loan, it'd be $3,500. One thing to note is that the student loan is currently for this upcoming year at a 2.75%. And then as Erin mentioned, there are some steps to receive those government loans. The next loan that I think will be on most of your accounts is going to be that Parent Plus loan. Now, as it states, that's a loan in the parent name. So the student doesn't legally have anything to do with that loan. That's the parent borrowing a loan to help the student out in terms of subsidizing that payment. And those amounts can range. They can be anywhere from, several $100s up to $10,000, $15,000, depending on your FAFSA results. That loan is at a 5.3% this year. And it is a credit-based loan. So as Erin mentioned, there's going to be some extra steps that you have to take through the government website to be able to get that loan. If those two, you've had discussions, maybe the student's going to borrow their loans and maybe you're still deciding about whether to borrow the Parent Plus loan or not. The alternative option to that would be a bank loan. And so some of our students and parents will end up going to an outside source, a resource, maybe it's a bank, sometimes a credit union, to get a student loan. The interest rates for those can vary. In fact, they can have a variable loan, which can be a very low interest rate, up to a fixed loan. And so we usually tell students those interest rates range between 2 and 13%. Now, more than likely, the loan will be in the student's name, but they're going to need a cosigner just because they don't have a long credit history. We do have a website, or I should say on our website, we do have a suggested lender list of those alternative loans and really the top 7 or 8 loans that our students tend to use. And so those loans, student, parent, or bank loan, are good ways to kind of subsidize the payments on your student account once you kind of figure out your balance. The other way would just be to make the payments. I know some of you guys will borrow a combination of student or parent, or maybe just student, and so you'll have a remaining balance. You know, maybe that's an amount that you can cover in terms of either a full payment. And so we pay per semester. The billing date's August 21st at 5 p.m. You can pay your balance in full, or you can sign up for what's called a deferment plan, which is kind of a broken down payment plan where you would break it down into 4 equal monthly payments. One for August, September, October, and November, and that would start back over for the winter, December, January, February, March. And so that payment plan is an option as well, and you would do that through the My Banner account or by calling our billing office. So those are kind of ways to subsidize that balance once you kind of figure that out.
Thank you so much, Ben, for that information. One other process that we have in our office is around special circumstances and some hardship requests. So we had some questions about the federal CARES funding we received, and we did receive $9.1 million in CARES funding for students that were enrolled in our past winter semester. And so we, as quickly as we could, took that money and gave it to our students because we know many of them had hardships, and we had an application process for that. Those funds were not particularly designated for students for this coming year, but we know that there are a variety of circumstances that have impacted many things in, around finances for fall. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenna, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of the special circ and hardship processes that we have in place to help our students for this fall and winter. Thanks, Jenna.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Michelle. I'm happy to be here this afternoon talking with all of you, especially about the special circumstances process. That is one of the processes in the office that I review and take to heart, keeping in mind that you filed your FAFSA using 2018 tax returns. And we are now, 2.5 years later from that, we are headed towards the end of 2020. And we know that your financial information right now may not be the same as it was on your 2018 tax returns. So we have a special circumstances process in place, as Michelle said, that allows us to update your FAFSA and your student's FAFSA to process it using up-to-date, accurate, current financial information. And if things have changed since you filed your FAFSA and there has maybe been a death in the family, or if there is more students going to college now than what was on the FAFSA when you initially filed it, we can take all of those things into account. And Nick is showing the screen right now that shows a little bit more information about our special circumstances process, where you can go to find the form. And we are also reviewing these special circumstances forms for additional hardship grants. So there's a special circumstances form button. There's also a grant request form button, and that would be if maybe a special circumstance doesn't apply to you, maybe financial situation hasn't changed, but you are in need of additional assistance for the upcoming academic year, we would be happy to review that for you as well.
All right, thank you for that information, Jenna. And thanks, Nick, for showing the website also. So one thing that I wanted to make sure that we addressed as well is we keep mentioning the payment deadline at August 21 at 5 p.m. And although we keep saying that, really what it means is we just want to hear from you before that time. It's very ideal, yes, that you have everything in place by then, but we know that, over the next few weeks, a lot of this is happening pretty quickly. And really, it's just important that you communicate with us, and we can extend those deadlines if needed, and we can work with you. I saw a few questions as well. I'm going to address one of them right now. There was a question of, is it too late to file the FAFSA and kind of get this process started? And absolutely not. Like we mentioned, we're trying to work through things as quickly as possible. Please feel free to file that FAFSA now. We suggest you do it as soon as possible. Sometimes there is additional documentation we need from you, and we will work with you on that. As long as you're communicating with us, we will make sure that we'll work with you through the deadline. So like I said, really it's just, we say there's a deadline and there is a deadline, but really what it means is we just want to hear from you by that deadline to make sure we know how you plan to fund it so we can work with you on that. Scholarships are a big part of that deadline sometimes, and we know their deadline doesn't always coincide with ours. And you've submitted a few questions, and I'm going to turn it over to Francesca Golden, and she's going to answer some questions about scholarships that were submitted prior to this, and then the ones that you've been submitting so far. So thanks, Fran.
Thanks, Michelle. So thank you for joining us today, and I would love to touch on some of your scholarship questions. So First of all, we get asked often, are there any additional scholarship opportunities left for me? And yes, the answer is always yes. There are lots of different scholarship opportunities. It's just about knowing where to look for them. So my first suggestion would be to check out My Scholarships, which is Grand Valley's online scholarship database. This is a database of our donor-funded and departmental-funded scholarships that are specifically for Grand Valley students. This is a database that you can have your student log into throughout their entire career at Grand Valley. So it's not just for freshmen, it's not just for seniors, it's for every year along the way. So our typical window for applying for scholarships is October 1 through March 1. Several of the scholarship deadlines end in March 1. So this is going to be the October through March before the academic year you're applying for. So for example, this coming October, we will be opening up My Scholarships for your student as a second-year student. So it does take a little bit of planning ahead of time in order for them to log into this portal and start applying. But I usually tell students the fall break and the winter break are great times to be logging into My Scholarships and looking for opportunities for the upcoming year. One of the great things about this portal is that when your student logs in and creates their general application, it will automatically pull all of their information from my banner right into My Scholarships. And some of the scholarships are automatically applied for. So if your student is an engineering major with a 3.0 GPA and there's a scholarship where that is the only requirement, it will automatically qualify for them and have them be considered in that pool. So it's really a great tool for them to be acquainted with and to use every single year that they are here. Now, if a student is selected for a scholarship in this portal, their status, you'll see once they've submitted an application, their status of their application will say submitted. Once a decision has been made, the status will either change to not selected or either offered or awarded. So that's how students know once a selection has been made for a scholarship opportunity in My Scholarships. If you have scholarship opportunities that still show as submitted, feel free to send us an email and we can take a look at those specific opportunities and let you know what the status is of those, whether it's a later deadline or they're waiting for some additional committee members to decide or something along those lines. So another great resource for you to apply for scholarships is our outside scholarship search. This is a portal we've created based on various organizations and agencies locally and nationally that have reached out to us and asked us to promote their scholarship opportunities. We have vetted these to ensure that they aren't scams, and typically they are opportunities that students from Grand Valley have received in the past. So we want to make sure your student isn't wasting time applying to hundreds of scholarships just to have their name and email added to an organization's email list. So we want these to be actual opportunities for your students. So that is another great place to go, and the deadlines can range much further out than March 1st. So even if your student was to log in or go to this outside scholarship search right now, they may see several different opportunities that are available right now. So they can use these filters as you see on your screen in order to dwindle down the thousands of options that are here, either by major or their GPA or something along those lines, and it will filter down then so that they can see which opportunities fit best for them. Now, in the event, I'm going to start answering some of these questions. So in the event your student has received a scholarship from an outside organization, let's say the local Lions Club, their community foundation, something along those lines, and they have received a scholarship check. Those can come in various ways. In some instances, the agency will send the scholarship check directly to Grand Valley, which is great. Then we can apply it directly to your student's account and apply it to their bill. In some events, the scholarship check will come to your home address. If that happens, you can either send that in the mail to us and we can apply it to your student's bill, or you can wait until your student is here physically on campus once they move in or here for classes, and we can apply the scholarship check toward their bill at that point. Now, there's a couple of different important things to note with this. The first is that if your student got a scholarship check and the check is written out to Grand Valley State University and your student's name, your student will be required to sign the back of the check. So they have to endorse it over to Grand Valley so that we can cash that check and apply it toward their student account. That's the first thing. The second thing is that if you know that you're getting a $1,000 check, let's say you got a letter that said, congratulations student, you're getting $1,000 for the 2021 academic year, and you know that we're not going to have that check by the August 21st payment deadline, just go ahead and communicate that with us. You can either send us a copy of that letter or something along those lines. Just give us a call and let us know, and then we can place an estimate on your account so that we know that that $1,000 is coming. And like Michelle talked about earlier, you've communicated with us. We know that $1,000 is coming to pay your bill, and we would make sure that you and your student are taken care of and you don't have to worry about that at that time.
Thanks, Fran. I'm going to ask you to answer one more question. We got quite a few people asked about some of the state scholarships that are offered, like the Michigan Competitive Scholarship or the TIP grant or scholarship. Can you please give us some information about those?
Yeah, definitely. So the state of Michigan offers a variety of different scholarships. The two largest scholarship programs, as Michelle stated, are the Michigan State Competitive Scholarship and the Tuition Incentive Program, which is also known as TIP. So the Michigan State Competitive Scholarship is a scholarship that you would already know if your student qualifies for. The state of Michigan sends those eligibility notifications earlier in the year and lets you know that your student has qualified based on their merit. There is also a need component, so a student is required to file a FAFSA in order to qualify for the state competitive scholarship. However, at this point, the state of Michigan has not determined the amount of the scholarship. So the actual amount of the scholarship is written within the state's budget. And as we know, with everything going on with COVID-19, at this point, the state's budget is really up in the air. So we are still waiting for those final figures because we don't want to over or under award your student the amount of state competitive scholarship that they qualify for. Sometimes those amounts have come through this time of year, and sometimes they come as late as October or November. So my suggestion to families is that if you know that your student qualifies for the scholarship, go ahead and take care of what you need to at the front end. Either sign up for a payment plan or make sure that the bill is covered. And then once that scholarship comes through, it will automatically apply toward the winter bill if you no longer owe a balance for the fall. Or you can get that back as a refund at that point in order to pay off some of your expenses and reimburse yourself. So that covers the state competitive. Now with the tuition incentive program, that is a program, again, that you would be notified of if you qualify for. It is a need-based program, and there are two different phases to it. So the first phase is specifically for an associate's level degree. And at this point in time, Grand Valley does not offer an associate's level degree, so we do not participate in phase one. Those phase one benefits can be used either at a community college or another institution that offers an associate level degree. Now for phase two, which is what Grand Valley participates in, that will kick in once your student reaches 55 credits earned, so basically junior level status, and then they will receive $500 per semester for 4 semesters, so that's a total of $2,000. And as long as your student has done what they need to with the state of Michigan to qualify for that, then that will automatically kick onto their account once they start being eligible for that. So their junior year, I will receive a roster, and then that will automatically be awarded.
All right, thank you, Fran. So the next topic we're going to get into that we received quite a few questions about was around refunds or if someone has excess financial aid. So we just kind of went through many different types of aid and how that might work. And many times students accept more aid or have scholarships or grants than actually is the cost that they're being charged for the semester. So Erin's going to talk a little bit about refunds and give you some information about that.
Thanks, Michelle. So refunds are generated the second week of classes. So after the students have attended their first week of classes, those refunds will begin generating. Now, there are two ways to receive the refunds. You can either receive it as a direct deposit or as a paper check. If you do not sign up for direct deposit, it will automatically be sent as a paper check to the permanent address that we have on file for your student. If you choose to have direct deposit, you will need to go under the student accounts tab and set up the direct deposit. with your routing and account information, and then that will be deposited into the account that you notified us that you wanted it put into.
Thanks, Erin. And then, once again, if you are expecting more of a refund or you need more of a refund, we can take a look at your file to see if anything can be increased. So just contact us and we will work with you. One of the next questions that we received a lot of things about is the Michigan Educational Savings Plan and the 529 plan. So Jenna, can you briefly discuss those and go over some of the answers to those questions?
Absolutely. So although the staff that you're looking at right now is from the Financial Aid Office, we also represent the Student Accounts Office. In the Michigan Education Trust or any other state college prepaid tuition plan, as well as the 529 savings plans, are all run through the Student Accounts Office. And it starts with you or with the holder of that plan contacting the servicer and letting the servicer know that the student is attending Grand Valley State University. And then the servicer will get in touch with our Student Accounts Office to start that process rolling, to get the information that they need to apply those funds to the student's account if it is a state tuition prepaid plan. And Nick is pulling up the addresses and the information that may be needed when you talk to your servicer. Now, the 529 plans are a little bit different because those are more like college savings plans. And those account holders, those servicers generally will refund those funds in that account right to the holder of the plan or even to the student directly. That just depends on the servicer. So again, it's back on to the holder of that plan to contact the 529 servicer, let them know that the student is attending Grand Valley. They may want to see a bill, they may want to see a class schedule. Each one operates a little bit differently, but you can let them know that the student is enrolled and these funds are going to be used towards paying tuition or paying for books or other educational expenses. And one thing that I also wanted to mention, since I had just mentioned books, and this is stepping away a little bit from the 529 and the Michigan Education or in-state prepaid plans, but students are able to start using their financial aid next week to charge their books at the bookstore. And so if your student has excess financial aid on their account and was planning on using that to purchase their books, as Erin said earlier, that money is not going to be refunded until the second week of classes, and students likely want to have their books before then. So they can use that refund money to purchase their books at the Laker store or use it to reimburse themselves if they do wait to get that refunded during the second week of classes. But then that also is, like I said, an eligible expense that the 529 savings plans can go towards as well.
Thanks, Jenna. And I also just wanted to mention here as well that we did record a paying the bill presentation for our new students and families, and that is on the orientation website. So if you haven't watched that yet or want to go back and rewatch some of the information we're sharing, once again, we know we're giving you a lot of information. That's a really good presentation to kind of walk you through. It also will give you a screenshot of the bill, and it will kind of help you understand where to look to see the financial aid on the bill and where to look for that. So I wanted to mention that at this point also. So the next topic that we received a lot of questions on is around student employment. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, who can go through some of the questions and answers we received, and then I might follow up with him with a few more questions as well. So we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about student employment.
Thanks, Michelle. So I guess a lot of questions we get is where do students start, and the place we tell students to start is called Handshake. It's a platform GVSU uses for all employment, whether it's on campus, off campus. For new incoming students, we really encourage them to start by creating their account on Handshake. And if you need help, you can go to our website at gvsu.edu student jobs, and there we have a section for students on how to create an account in Handshake. And then beyond that, there's some resources there for students on how to apply to jobs, what are employers looking for, and some tips on working with on-campus supervisors. As of yesterday, there were 60 jobs that are active on Handshake, and they will be more as supervisors are getting ready for fall semester. And sometimes we also get a question, can my student wait and see how things are on campus and then later apply for a job? And that's absolutely fine. There will be jobs posted throughout the year. Even as we get close to end of the semester, there will be jobs for next semester. and there's jobs posted next semester for the summer. So we have job posted throughout the year, and there's no specific deadline that you have to apply to a job by a certain deadline to get an employment opportunity on campus.
All right, thanks, Hugh. Another question kind of related to student employment. We receive questions about work study and non-work study jobs. So sometimes this can be a little confusing. So as Hugh was talking about employment and students applying for jobs, we know that there are many students who have work study and there are many students who do not have work study. And it really doesn't make a difference to the department or when you're looking, a student when you're looking for a job. So there are some jobs that are posted only for our work study students, but once a student has accepted that work study award on their financial aid account, they would see those jobs definitely in Handshake. So Hugh, do you want to talk a little bit more about the differences there? And then I can add some information as well.
Yeah, so like Michelle said, there's opportunities there for students that have work study, but there's also opportunities for students that don't have work study. So a lot of our smaller departments, they will utilize work study because their budgets are somewhat limited, but they'll use work study to help them with their budgets. But like I said, there's again opportunity. Like if your student doesn't have work study, it does not mean they don't have opportunities. They will have plenty of opportunities, specifically even at our bigger departments like dining, campus rec, housing. So there's not, jobs that are not for work study students. So we will have plenty of opportunities. And yes, some of them, as your students get used to Handshake, they will see on Handshake, some departments will say only work study students, but that's not to discourage you. That's just to say like there's other opportunities that you can use that are open to both work study students and non-work study students. The students will get a paycheck every other week. That's how like the work study students earn their award amount, but the students that don't have work study, they just get their paycheck like the work study student, and it is for them to use the way they would like to use the money they get from their job. It's paid out bi-weekly, and sometimes over the break, students ask like, am I still gonna get my paycheck? Depending on how many hours they work, they will get a paycheck over like winter break or spring break. And talking about break, students can work more hours during a university break. So spring break, students can work up to 40. During regular school, students can work up to 25 hours a week.
All right, thanks, Hugh. And yeah, once again, just to reemphasize that whether a student has work study or non-work study, they work at their position, they receive a paycheck every other week, and they can use those funds however they want to. So for those that have work study awards on their account, we do not automatically take that funding and apply it towards the bill at all. So if you have work study on a financial aid award, it's nothing that's paid up front. The students do have to earn those wages, but the way they earn them is through a paycheck. We're happy to answer any questions or email us if you still have some questions around that. But I know we put this in the chat as well, but majority of our jobs are actually for students who do not have work study. So I know that's sometimes a myth or a common question of, well, I don't have work study, so I can't get a job. And at Grand Valley, that's absolutely not the case. So just wanting to make sure that we addressed all your student employment questions. So thank you so much, Hugh. At this point, I'm going to look through the chat, but I do think we answered a lot of the other questions. Does anyone see a question that was submitted? Or is there anything else that we wanted to add to our presentation today from anyone on the panel?
I'll just mention real quick, somebody asked about the cost of attendance, Michelle. And I just wanted to mention that the cost of attendance is just an estimate that we use in the financial aid office to kind of figure out what tuition, room and board, maybe some of those extra educational expenses would be for a student. And so it's just an estimate because we awarded your freshman maybe as early as January of this year. But now at this point, as long as your students registered for classes, they should have an actual bill on their account that they can look at and then get the actual bill for the fall semester. Certainly cost of attendances can be different, whether you're off campus, you're on campus, you're in state, you're out of state, you're commuting from home. And so I guess if you would have any other questions about your specific cost of attendance or your financial aid package, that's the one other thing I would mention is just feel free to call or email us. We're open 8 to 5. We respond to emails as soon as we can, usually within a 24-hour time frame, maybe even just a couple hours actually. And then we can answer your phone calls as well. So don't ever hesitate to call or email us. We'd love to hear from you with any questions you might have. So.
All right, thank you so much, Ben. And yeah, just once again, please call our office or email us. We know, like I said, it's kind of coming down towards the payment deadline, and we're very willing to work with you and answer any questions that you have. So we don't want to take up any more of the time than we need. And once again, we know we gave you a lot of information. So thank you so much for joining us today. We will absolutely be able to answer your questions. If you have any more, submit them through the Q&A or email us at finaid@gvsu.edu, and we will respond by the end of the day today as well. So thank you so much, everyone. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day.